In this section, you will learn the procedures to conduct a free operant preference assessment. For this assessment, you will need the free operant datasheet, the stimuli you're assessing, and multiple stopwatches. For this assessment, we are using multiple stopwatches from an online website. The link has been provided under this video. You will need a stopwatch for every item, in this case 4, because we have 4 items. And if you're also assessing problem behavior, you will need an additional stopwatch for each item. In this case, we will be assessing rocking as a problem behavior, so we'll be using 4 additional stopwatches. Before you start the assessment, set up by placing the items you are going to assess on the table or the floor. The items should be placed evenly apart and within equal proximity to the client. Bring the client to the area of assessment and instruct the client to play.
Hey Mel, play with your toys. Okay.
You will start the stopwatch immediately when the client begins engaging with an item. Then, stop the stopwatch when the client stops interacting with the item. We are doing this because we want to determine how much time the client is spending with each item. If you're also collecting data on problem behavior, you will start the stopwatch when the client starts engaging in the problem behavior while interacting with an item. And you will stop the stopwatch when the client stops engaging in problem behavior. We do this when we want to determine whether the client engages in problem behavior longer when interacting with a specific item. You should withhold interactions with the client during the whole assessment. We do this because we do not want to interfere with what the client selects. After the assessment ends, record the duration of engagement with each item. And if you collected data on the problem behavior, record the duration of problem behavior with each item. To make sure that you're conducting a free operant preference assessment correctly, your supervisor might use a performance monitoring tool like the one shown here. On this section are all the steps that you need to perform during a free operant preference assessment. On this section is where they will mark whether you conducted each step correctly or incorrectly during each interval. In this teaching video, we will be using 30-second intervals. And on this section, they will mark whether you conducted all the steps correctly during that interval. If you conducted all the steps correctly, they will mark a 1. If you conducted any of the steps incorrectly, they will mark a 0. Okay, now let's watch a video of how to collect data on the RVT. Okay, it looks like the RVT placed all the items on the table evenly apart and within equal proximity from where the client will be sitting. She gets a 1 on step 1.
Hey Mel, play with your toys. Okay.
Very good. She instructed the client to play. Now we're going to check if she starts and stops the stopwatches correctly, and we will record a 0 or 1 at the end of the 30-second interval. Notice that she started the stopwatch immediately after the client picked up the book. Good, she stopped the stopwatch when the client stopped interacting with the book. Okay, the 30 seconds are up, and she gets a 1 on step 3 because she started the stopwatch when the client engaged with an item. She also stopped the stopwatch when the client stopped engaging with the items, so she gets a 1 on step 4. There was no problem behavior while engaging with an item, so I am leaving step 5A and B blank. She performed all the steps correctly during this 30-second interval, so she gets a 1. Now we're on the second interval. Nice! She started the stopwatch when the client grabbed the green toy. Very good. She quickly stopped the stopwatch when the client placed the green toy on the table and started the other stopwatch when the client grabbed the teddy bear. Okay, the 30 seconds are up and she gets a 1 on step 3 and 4 because she started and stopped the stopwatches correctly every time during this interval. Alright, she gets a 1 for the second interval. Okay, moving on to the third interval. She started the stopwatch when the client began rocking back and forth while holding the teddy bear, and she also stopped the stopwatch when the client stopped rocking back and forth. Good, she stopped and started the stopwatches correctly every single time during this interval, so she gets a 1 on step 3 and 4. She also started and stopped the stopwatches when the client engaged in problem behavior, so she gets a 1 for step 5A and 5B. She performed all the steps correctly, so she gets a 1 on the third interval. Now we're on the fourth interval. Oh, she did not start the stopwatch immediately when the client began engaging with the item.
All done.
She gets a 0 on step 3 and 4 because she did not start and stop the timer immediately after the client started engaging with the green toy, nor when she stopped engaging with it. She did withhold attention towards the client during the assessment, so she gets a 1 for step 6. Now let's check if she recorded the duration at the end of the assessment. Very good. She did record the duration, so she gets a 1 on step 7. She gets a 0 for this interval because she did not perform all the steps correctly. Alright, now it's your turn to collect data on the RBT. Make sure you have your performance monitoring tool out.
Hey, now play with your toys. Okay, thanks. We're all done. Okay.